Recording in progress.
Hereby call to order the Roseville City Council meeting for Monday, October 9th, 2023. Mr. City Manager, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmember Etten.
Here.
Councilmember Schroeder.
Here.
Councilmember Groff.
Here.
Councilmember Strawn.
Here.
Mayor Rowe.
Here. And with us at the dais, we have our City Attorney, Rachel Tierney, on my right at the end of the dais, and our City Manager, Pat Trudgeon, on my left at the other end of the dais. We also have staff, department heads, and others who will be participating in the meeting this evening, and those folks will be introduced as the meeting proceeds. I did want to note for people who are participating remotely online that to come into the meeting to speak, you have to let us know you want to do that at the appropriate time, and you do that by using the raise your hand feature in Zoom. So it might be worthwhile to take a couple moments at this point just to familiarize yourself if you're not sure how to do that. And then once again, when opportunities come up, or if you're a speaker on a particular item, you'll want to let us know by using that raise your hand feature, and we'll make sure and bring you into the meeting. For those here in the chambers, we want to make sure that we don't have any disruptions to the meeting, so please check your cell phones and either put them on silent or otherwise assure that they don't disrupt the meeting. With that, we'll ask folks to stand if you're able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right, our first item of business on the agenda is to confirm tonight's agenda, and we'll just double check with staff. Mr. Trudgeon, are there any staff-initiated changes to the agenda this evening?
No changes to the agenda, Mr.
All right. And we'll check with council members. Are there any changes council members would like to make to the agenda this evening, or one of the two items on the consent agenda to request for separate consideration? All right, and we'll do a quick check with the public. There are two items, as I mentioned, on our consent agenda, which is item 10 on the second page of our agenda. Those items are approval of our payments and consideration of a series of either THC licenses or a temporary liquor license. Normally, those items are taken up as a single motion with limited opportunity for discussion and questions, and also at the very end of the meeting. But if anybody is here this evening for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda, once again, 10A and B. A is approval of the payments, and B is a couple of THC licenses and a temporary liquor license. If you're here for one of those items to either speak or ask a question, you'd want to let us know, and we can take that item up earlier in the meeting. If you're here for one of the tobacco or alcohol violation items, those items will be taken up at their normal time. But once again, this is specifically related to the items at the end of our agenda under the consent agenda, which is the payments or the two THC licenses or temporary liquor license. If you're here to either ask questions or make a comment about one of those items, let us know at this time, and we'll make sure and take that item up earlier in the meeting. Is there anyone here for an item in section 10 of tonight's agenda? And I should note for people participating remotely, if you happen to be here for one of those items to make a comment or ask a question, this will be your first opportunity to use that raise your hand feature and let us know if you're here for an item, once again, 10A or 10B at the end of tonight's agenda. Doesn't appear we have anyone here for any consent item this evening then. So a motion to approve the agenda as presented would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We have our agenda for this evening. Next on the agenda is an opportunity for public comment of a general nature. We will provide opportunities for public comment on specific agenda items as they come up through the course of the meeting. But we do always, at the beginning of each meeting, provide an opportunity for general public comment. This is usually about items that are not on tonight's agenda, but either may be related to city business or of interest to people in the community. So this would be an opportunity for members of the public to speak on items that are, once again, not on tonight's agenda. This goes for folks participating remotely as well. If you're here to do so, you want to use the raise your hand feature in Zoom. Otherwise, if you're here in person and wish to speak to a non-agenda item at this time, this is your opportunity to do so. Is there anyone here to speak on general public comment this evening? Right, does not appear to be the case.
I do have 3 people with their hands raised.
3 people with their hands raised. All right.
So this is public comment.
This is general public comment not related to agenda items on tonight's agenda, if that changes anybody's mind.
Now I have 4, so
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
It did.
All right.
I'll bring the first person in.
Very good. So while that's happening, we'll just note the rules for public comment. Once again, you want to start your comment with your name and either your street or address for the record. And also, please direct your comments or questions to the City Council. We do have a 3-minute time limit per speaker for public comments. And if we can't respond immediately this evening, we will certainly refer a matter, if necessary, to staff for follow-up. So do we have our first remote?
They're not entering.
With that, then, I'm presuming we don't have additional online participants, Mr. Trudgeon? I believe we went through the ones.
No new ones. no.
Okay. And we don't have anybody in the chambers here, I don't believe, who had raised their hand earlier to speak in public comment. All right. Well, we'll close public comment then, and we'll move on with the business of the rest of our city council meeting. And once again, I do want to apologize for some of the inappropriate comments that were made earlier. We do want to try to provide an opportunity for people to exercise their freedom of speech, but at the same time, we do want to be respectful to people, and also we do want to try to keep things focused on local issues. With that, our first business item, or our first preview of business items, is a recognition and donation item in Section 5, Item 5A, which is to adopt a resolution accepting a gift, or a donation, I should say, from the Roseville Police Foundation. We have our Chief of Police, Erica Scheider, with us this evening to introduce this donation. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. I'm here tonight to ask the council to adopt a resolution to accept a donation from our Roseville Police Foundation. The foundation has existed for a number of years, and they've helped us out with some really critical equipment, especially the things that we may not have budgeted for. A few years ago, they were able to support our canine, the purchase of 2 new canines when we had to have our canines retire early due to medical issues. We are looking to purchase a new covert camera. That is a camera that we have been using for a number of years. Unfortunately, our cameras reach their end of life and they're no longer able to be used just because of the evolving technology. Those covert cameras are really important when we're investigating things like human trafficking, auto thefts, illegal businesses, or illegal criminal activity at our businesses or at a residence. And so we are asking the council to approve that donation. It's roughly about $7,000 for one of these new cameras. We unfortunately did not have it in our budget, which is why we've gone to the foundation to make that request.
All right, thank you, Chief. Are there any questions from the council members of staff on this item? All right. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this acceptance of the donation from the Roseville Police Foundation? All right. The requested action is to, by motion, approve the resolution accepting the donation. That is attachment 1 in the packet information.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Etten. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Strawn is the maker.
I just thank you for being innovative and creative and finding a way to make sure that we have this tool, which I'm sure keeps a lot of people safe on the police side as well as the civilian side. So thank you.
All right, as the seconder, Councilmember Etten.
Thank you to the Police Foundation for their excellent support of our department.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? Not, we have the motion before us to adopt the resolution accepting that donation from the Roseville Police Foundation. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That donation is accepted. Thanks again to the foundation, and thank you, Chief, for being here to introduce this evening. All right, that brings us to our business items. We've got a number of items this evening related to compliance check violations, and we'll take each item in turn as they're listed here in the packet information. The first item is item 7A, which is to consider the presumptive penalty for a tobacco compliance violation. And this is for Quick Mart, and I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Joe Adams, who will be with us for a little while going through these items. Chief Adams.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Each year, the police department conducts 2 alcohol and 2 tobacco compliance checks of all of our license holders. This year, the first round of checks were completed in August with a total of 2 tobacco failures and 8 alcohol compliance failures. For 2023, all businesses with city liquor or tobacco licenses were mailed a letter advising them the city would be conducting compliance checks. For alcohol, the letter also reminded them on the requirement that all employees undergo annual approved server training programs. Due to the total number of failures, I'll provide a brief summary of each incident followed by the staff recommendation. I do believe there are several representatives from different businesses here with us today. So as mentioned, Mayor, the first is going to be for Quick Mart on a tobacco compliance failure. On August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to Quick Mart to conduct a tobacco compliance check. While there, the compliance checker asked for his pack of cigarettes. The employee did not ask for ID and proceeded to sell the cigarettes to our compliance checker. The employee was issued a citation administratively, which has since been paid. This is Quick Mart's 3rd compliance failure in 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to city code for tobacco license holders for a 3rd violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of $2,000 and a 7-day license suspension.
All right, thank you, Chief Adams. Are there questions for staff from the council? Councilmember Strawn.
Chief Adams, can you just give us what happens next? If there's a 4th, what happens? Can you just reiterate for us what?
Absolutely. Councilmember Strawn, the 4th violation within 36 months would be a license revocation
Okay,
on this business.
thank you.
All right, any other questions for staff? Right, is there a representative from Quick Mart here this evening who wishes to speak as to their violation? Feel free to come up and have a seat at the table and introduce yourself. Looks like we've got a couple of folks, so we may have to grab another chair. Or Chief, step aside for a moment. Welcome, and once again, if you could introduce yourself before your comments. And
Mr. Mayor and esteemed members of the City Council, Mr. City Manager, and Madam Attorney, my name is Brad Hattie. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of Ahmed El-Qaderi, who is the owner of the Quick Mart. Part of the reason why I'm here is that he felt that translation would be easier if I spoke on his behalf. I will be quick and I will be brief. Mr. El-Qaderi is a client of mine. I've known him for a number of years. As an attorney, we look at things in the totality of circumstances, and that's what I'm asking this council to do when considering a deviation, a downward deviation from the presumptive rule within the guidelines or the code from Roseville. Mr. El-Qaderi is aware that this is a 3rd offense within 36 months. Mr. El-Qaderi has worked at convenience stores and his particular Quick Mart that he owns for a total of 15 years, and this is his personal 1st violation. But more than that, the morning that this happened, he had received an emergency telephone call from the hospital where his wife was delivering a baby, and the child was under emergency medical care, and so his mind was another place. And he understands that he did not properly check the ID. So we're not here to make an excuse. We're here to talk about a reason and why we believe that there are mitigating circumstances. I have 2 letters from the Children's Hospital of Minnesota that detail the seriousness of the birth of his child and why his mind was someplace else other than at that moment selling a pack of cigarettes. Mr. El-Qaderi treats this very seriously. As I mentioned, this is his first offense. Mr. El-Qaderi also came in right away to pay this $250 fine. He was requested to take the course of stop sales to minors. He took that on September 27, 2023, and received the congratulations email that he had passed the course. Mr. El Kaderi is asking the members of this body to consider those circumstances as it makes a decision on those presumptive rules. He's asking that, that any suspension of time be reduced from the 7 days. In addition, he's also asking that a fine be reduced from $2,000 to something significantly less, because like all of us, money is very important to him. He also stands here tonight, either through me or by himself, willing to answer any questions by this council. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Heddy. I appreciate that. Are there questions from the council for the representatives of Quick Mart this evening? Questions? All right. Maybe stand ready in the audience if something does come up, but we appreciate you speaking on behalf of
Thank
your
you. And
clients.
if the council wishes, I can hand them the letters
I
from the
would say you
hospital.
can certainly provide that to Mr. Trudgeon, and we'll make sure that becomes part of the official record of
Thank you.
this item. All right. And we'll ask if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak as to this particular requested imposition of the mandatory minimum. If you can, maybe feel free to step off to the side of the table here so that we can continue. I don't mean to rush you. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak as to this requested imposition of the presumptive penalty on this item? All right, seeing no one from the public who wishes to speak, we'll go to council consideration of the request to impose the presumptive penalty. Councilmember Atten.
May I ask the police department a question?
Yes.
Was this same owner in charge of this establishment when the previous 2 violations happened?
That licensure question, I know we looked into it for the second violation to make sure that it was still the same owner at that time. I'm assuming it is, but I cannot answer that confidently. But I do believe that when we have the continued violations, it is for the same ownership.
And I believe that's in our own ordinance that we don't count
Roll it.
violations of previous
Okay.
owners.
All right, thank you.
So hopefully our process has worked in that regard this evening. Other questions or perhaps a motion from the council? Oh, I was going to ask Deputy Chief if, what is the, and I hope you remember it because I don't, if it was their second violation, what would the fine and the suspension be? Or you've got it to refer to?
Fortunately, I brought the fee schedule with me today, highlighted even.
Good planning.
So for tobacco, the second violation was also a $2,000 fine, but a 3-day suspension.
Okay.
As opposed to the 7-day.
I just wanted to see the relative difference between them. Thank you. All right. Council members, Councilmember Strong.
I'd like to move to impose the presumptive penalty as noted of $2,000 with a 7-day suspension.
All right, is there a second? All right, Councilmember Groff, seconds. Once again, that's a motion to impose the presumptive penalty as requested. Discussion of the motion, Councilmember Strawn is the maker of the motion.
I'm sorry for your child. I'm sorry that things are at that point for you, and we've all had that type of thing happen for sure. But every person in this room wants us to reduce their fee, and if we didn't adhere to the presumptive penalties as indicated, then it's however much you ask and beg us to. We don't want to be in that position. We want to have you understand what the penalties are and the seriousness of the situation, and that you take it serious, because if it's a possibility that you can have it reduced because you have all the right words, then I feel like it weakens our ability to do the job and protect our officers who are out on the field making these decisions. So I think that I'm sorry for the troubles, but we all have many things happening, and that does not negate the 2 prior situations. And so I do think we need to be consistent in this situation as well.
All right, as the seconder of the motion, Councilmember Groff, discussion on the motion.
Well, I would just like to comment, these are serious allegations, serious issues we've got going on. This is a health issue. We've discussed this as a council for many years. We don't take these penalties lightly. We've discussed how to do this and how to stop having alcohol and cigarettes sold to minors. So this is why these are in place, and that's why this is happening. If it wasn't something to get your attention, they'd be sold even more. So everyone has to be very careful when you're selling alcohol or cigarettes. You need to look at that license carefully. It's very obviously stated on the license that it's not, that they're a minor. So that's why I'm seconding it.
All right, any other discussion on the motion? I just would add to what Councilmember Groff said, or reiterate that certainly it is the protection of the health of the public. Our concern is that when we happen to have somebody sell to a underage person during these compliance checks, that gives us some concern that those sales are happening when there's not a compliance check involved. And that is not something that is good for the health of the young people in our community, especially when it comes to tobacco products. And so that's why I'm supportive of the motion as stated, to impose the particular penalty as it's outlined. And I would note that I think we're going to be taking, as we get to the point of license renewal, these types of instances will be something that can be considered by the council, and I'm not saying we're going to do that. Certainly we will give people due process if that were the desire of the council. But I think it does, repeat violations in a short period of time does give the council pause in terms of how we deal with license renewals. So I'll just note that without saying specifically that we're not going to renew a license, because I don't know what will ultimately happen in that regard. But it is something we do take into account when those license renewals come up. With that, we've got the motion before us. This is once again to impose the presumptive penalty as requested. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that penalty will be imposed. And I do want to say we do appreciate people being here this evening to make their case. It's not that we don't want to hear that. We just want to make sure that we are doing right by the community. With that, we have our second case, and that is another tobacco compliance violation. This is for Noble Tobacco. Mr. Deputy Chief.
On August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to Noble Tobacco to conduct a tobacco compliance check. While there, the compliance checker asked for a pack of cigarettes. The employee did not ask for ID and proceeded to sell the cigarettes to our checker. The employee was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. This is Noble Tobacco's second compliance failure in 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to City Code for tobacco license holders for a second violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of $2,000 and a 3-day tobacco license suspension.
All right, thank you. Are there questions on this particular case from council to staff? All right, do we have a representative of Noble Tobacco with us this evening who wishes to speak to their case? Feel free to come up and have a seat, and once again, if you could introduce yourself, feel free, come on up.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, welcome.
My name is Ahmad. I'm a new manager in Noble Tobacco, like maybe 1 year ago. It's actually, whatever, law is a law, I know. It's happened. But I'm a manager. I'm leave the store with my friend because I have an emergency with my daughter. She had a flat tire in the highway. And we have a problem with the employer. I don't have employer. I'm a manager. I'm working like every day over there because we have an issue with this situation. I need you to give me you forgive me this time, because I know it's happened. I'm a manager almost 1 year, but this is the first time happened to me.
All right. Thank you for being here this evening and asking for what you're asking for, and we'll take that into consideration.
Please, I'm asking if you give me forgive me for the 3 days business license and to $2,000.
All right. We'll take that into account.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this requested presumptive penalty? You can feel free to have a seat.
Thank you.
Anyone from the public who wishes to speak in this particular case? All right, we'll close the opportunity for public comment and we'll move to council consideration. Does council have any follow-up questions for staff or the representative of Noble Tobacco? Otherwise, a motion related to the requested presumptive penalty would be in order. Councilmember Atten?
I have a question again.
Yeah.
Do we know if this employee was an employee or just a friend standing in the store?
It's the understanding that it was a friend, not an employee.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion from the council?
I would move to do the presented penalty as stated.
Second.
All right, it's moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Atten to authorize the presumptive penalty, which is once again the 3-day suspension and $2,000 fine. As the maker of the motion, Councilmember Schroeder.
I think it's the same comments that I would echo that were from the previous violation, that we take it very seriously, and it's for the health of the public that we need to enforce it.
All right, as the seconder, Councilmember Atten.
Nothing more. Thank you.
Okay. Additional discussion on the motion. And I would just note, sometimes the decision has to be made that if you don't have somebody who can identify people as to whether they're old enough to purchase the products, perhaps the decision needs to be not to stay open if you have to leave the business. That's the facts of the matter, I guess you might say, that the hard truth there. So it's a little bit of an expensive lesson to learn, and we certainly understand there are financial impacts to businesses for these suspensions and fines. But at the same time, once again, the purpose is to reinforce the understanding that sales to minors is a serious consideration, and we want to make sure that thought process is constantly there. Councilmember Brown.
And just one other thing, when you do get those letters from the city, as you know, since you're here, they are serious, and we will be out twice each year to check. That's why we send those letters out, to remind you as small business owners that this will be happening. The other thing is that when you leave a store in the hands of a friend, that friend has not had the training to identify those licenses. So really think about that carefully. You should not be leaving it with someone who has not had the training to identify underage.
And we're assuming that that's the case. I mean, it may have been an individual who does have the training, but at the same time, if you're at all not sure, you want to err on the side of not ending up in a situation where you're selling your products to minors. All right, we've got the motion before us. If there's no further discussion, once again, this is a motion to authorize issuance of the presumptive penalty in this case. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That penalty is authorized. The third case is an alcohol compliance violation for Applebee's. Chief Adams.
On August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to Applebee's to conduct a compliance check. While there, the compliance checker ordered an alcoholic beverage. The employee then checked the underage ID and proceeded to provide alcohol to the checker. The server was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. Applebee's has provided the necessary training documentation to PD staff. This is Applebee's first violation within 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to city code for on-sale license holders for a first violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of $2,000 and a 1-day liquor license suspension.
Thank you, Chief. Are there questions for staff on this particular case? All right. Do we have a representative of Applebee's with us this evening who wishes to speak? And once again, feel free to introduce yourself as you begin your comments.
Hi, Council. My name is Dallas Ward. I'm the general manager of the location here in Roseville. I just wanted to come before you and let you know that we do take this very seriously. Our staff does have mandatory training when they're hired, and then yearly we have it updated for them as well. This is our first violation, and I'm, obviously I would like to have some kind of break, but I'm not asking for that. I just wanted to be here to present myself to see if you had any questions for myself or how Applebee's does their training. Once again, I do take it seriously. We did have to let this team member go, at the moment of the compliance check once he failed. I just, like I said, I wanted to be here to make sure I could represent Applebee's if there was any questions from the council.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ward. Are there questions from the council for the representative of Applebee's?
No.
Thank you for being here this evening, and as was noted in the presentation by the Deputy Chief, we do appreciate the fact that you are doing the training.
Yes.
And we seems to numerically indicate that there is less of a likelihood of a violation, given only your first violation in the last 3 years. So, that may be an indication that the process does work, but we still have these instances that do happen. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, we do have a hand raised
Oh,
from
great.
a new person.
Okay,
Bring that person in.
this will be for public comment on this particular item, I think, unless it's a representative also of Applebee's. Seeing none, thank you again for being here, Mr. Ward. We have the requested presumptive penalty before us. Council, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Etten, to issue the presumptive penalty, which is once again for a first violation in 3 months, 36 months, $2,000 fine, and a 1-day suspension. Discussion of the motion is the maker of the motion, Councilmember Groff.
I want to thank Applebee's for continuing their education process. And your first violation in 36 months doesn't mean that you are doing some things right. But we as a community have to be very diligent. But I do appreciate you being here and speaking to us tonight.
Any other discussion on the motion? Councilmember Etten is the
No,
second.
thank you.
We therefore have the motion before us to issue the presumptive penalty to Applebee's as outlined. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That penalty is authorized. That brings us then to our fourth case this evening, which is a alcohol compliance check for Chili's. And I'll turn it over once again to Deputy Chief Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. On August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to Chili's to conduct a compliance check. While there, the compliance checker ordered an alcoholic beverage. The employee then checked the underage ID and proceeded to provide alcohol to our checker. The server was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. Chili's has provided the necessary training documentation to PD staff. This is Chili's second violation in 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to city code for on-sale license holders for a second violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of $2,000 and a 5-day liquor license suspension.
All right, thank you again, Chief Adams. Questions for staff from council on this one? Councilmember Schroeder.
Could you please verify that the underage license is a different orientation? And what are the difference between the underage and the over 21 license?
Thank you, Councilmember Schroeder, and great question. So the state of Minnesota has gone to great lengths recently in the last few years to make this as simple, I guess, for individuals that have to check IDs as possible. The two different things to note is the orientation of the license is vertical versus horizontal, like your license or mine. The second thing, in bold letters, it says under 21. And so in past years or years past, you used to have to do the math, which was difficult for some individuals. This case, the state of Minnesota has gone to great lengths where if you actually look at the ID, it makes it relatively easy.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, are there other questions from the council for staff? If not, do we have a representative from Chili's here with us this evening? And there's two individuals, so Chief Adams, if you can step aside and give yours. Hello and welcome, and thank you for being here. And
Hi,
if you could
welcome.
introduce yourself.
I'm Brian Culp. I'm Director of Operations for Chili's Grill and Bar.
And I'm CJ Nottingham. I'm the actual GM of the Chili's in Roseville.
So, yeah, just on behalf of Brinker International and Chili's Grill and Bar, I just want to, we had a team member that acted irresponsibly, and we're just owning that and accepting that. And we've just taken extra steps that, in our restaurant that we are going to just card and verify and identify every single guest that orders alcoholic beverage. And we take it seriously. The team member that did this was a 15-year team member. We fired her on the spot, and that's our policy. And and this is, she broke the law, and we take it seriously, and it's not going to happen again. I appreciate it.
Any questions for the representatives of Chili? All right, and thank you again for being here and for having your training program that you do have, and Appreciate that that is in place.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we have the request for the, I forgot to check if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this, and I would just note, I believe we're going to suspend participation from people online this evening due to the issues we've already had. So no more people will be permitted to speak who are participating remotely this evening. With that, is there anyone from the public here in the chambers who wishes to speak to this particular presumptive penalty request? All right, with that, we have the request. Is there a motion from the council?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, second by Councilmember Etten, to authorize issuance of the presumptive penalty for this violation for Chili's. Discussion on the motion. As the maker of the motion, Councilmember Schroeder. As the seconder, Councilmember Etten. No. All right, any other discussion on the motion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of issuing the presumptive penalty indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That penalty is authorized. That then brings us to our fifth violation this evening, which is a compliance check alcohol violation for D'Amico and Sons. And I'll turn it over to Chief Adams once again.
Mayor, on August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to D'Amico and Sons to conduct a compliance check. While there, the compliance checker ordered an alcoholic beverage. The employee then checked the underage ID and proceeded to provide alcohol to our checker. The server was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. D'Amico and Sons has provided the necessary training documentation to PD staff. This is D'Amico and Sons' first violation in 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to city code for on-sale license holders for a first violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of $2,000 and a one-day liquor license suspension.
All right, thank you, Chief. Once again, are there any questions for the staff from council this evening? All right, is there a representative from D'Amico and Sons with us this evening who wishes to speak? Hello and welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much, and thank you for your hard work for the city of Roseville. I just wanted to be here to say thank you, and we take it very seriously. It is a yearly training program. Unfortunately, this employee was a summer hire on her very last day, and we made a mistake, and we take responsibility for that. What I would like to respectfully request, our failure was on August 12th, and on September 8th, we received a letter with a fine of $1,000, and then on September 11th, your council passed a new ordinance increasing that violation to $2,000. And then on September 13th, we received an email and a letter stating that there was a 100% increase on the fine. So we are just respectfully requesting that the fine for our alcohol compliance check failure remain the amount that was listed when the failure occurred and not the 100% increase that was approved a month after that.
And if you could state your name again for the record.
Amy Britton, thank
Amy
you.
Britton.
I'm the operations manager.
Got it, okay. All right, are there questions from the council for Ms. Britton? Great. Thank you for being here this evening. We'll take your request into consideration. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this request, or this requested administration of the presumptive penalty for this alcohol violation? Seeing no one, I just do want to check with our city attorney if there's any concern related to the fact that we changed our penalty between when the violation occurred and when this case is before us.
Mayor, council members, I'm trying to pull up my code just to make sure. This question obviously came up before, and we discussed it, and the, I'll have this up in a minute, but your code is silent on what happens if there is a change and when that change becomes effective, as far as if it's effective, if the penalties are effective based on when the violation occurred, or if the penalties are effective when the penalty is imposed. And so it's up to the council. It's a policy decision of whether you want to apply those penalties based on when the offense occurred or based on when the penalty is imposed.
Thank you. And do you have any, how should I say this, any indication of practices in other cases that might guide us in this particular instance?
Well, what might guide you in this particular instance is that under state law, usually there's a delay in when the penalties become effective. It's rare that a penalty is effective upon enactment, but that's how cities operate. I've never actually had a situation like this occur representing a city before, but state law does have that delay in implementation, so that avoids this issue.
Thank you for that. And we do have, let's see, a couple of, were the previous alcohol compliance.
Applebee's would also be affected by this
So I was just going to
decision.
say, we might have to revisit prior actions because of the fact that all the violations occurred prior to the change. And this is specifically the change to the penalty for the on-sale establishments, if I remember correctly.
Mayor, that's correct. It would only apply to the on-sale violations, so the alcohol violations, and
Both.
only the first-time offenses.
Off-sale and on-sale, we changed.
Right, only related to alcohol, right,
Oh,
not
for the
tobacco.
first-time offenses?
Yes.
First time offense.
Got you, that's
With
what it was, for both
$1,000
on-sale
Yeah,
and
we
off-sale.
changed both.
Yes.
On the alcohol side. Okay, thank you for the, okay, I appreciate that. All right, so we have the question before the council, I guess, as to how we want to proceed on this. Councilmember Atten?
I think it is reasonable to suggest that we would use our previous amount, even though I was the one who suggested increasing the amount. I think it is a little tough to pass that later. It wasn't in light of those things, but rather ongoing issues we had. But I would be in favor of $1,000 instead of the $2,000 for these first-time violations. So using the code as it was in August 2023, and then we need to go back and revisit the Applebee's piece.
There is a process for that.
Yes.
So we'll do that.
We haven't done that very often.
We have
so.
this matter before us, and who better than the person who requested the increase to speak to this particular case and this particular request this evening. Councilmember Schroeder.
And also, I would note that since a letter went out with the $1,000 originally, and that we would go back and send a second letter, doesn't seem reasonable.
Perhaps sending the second letter was reasonable, but imposing the penalty certainly might not be reasonable. So, council's desire with respect to this particular case before us. Councilmember Atten.
I move a $1,000 penalty and still the one-day suspension.
I would second that.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Etten, seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to impose the prior presumptive penalty, which was the $1,000 fine and the one-day suspension for the on-sale establishment for the first violation. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Etten, as the maker.
I think we've talked about it.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Schroeder. All right. With that, we have the motion before us. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that is a $1,000 fine and a one-day suspension. And was the Applebee's case, that was also a first violation,
also,
so we
yes.
should, so we need, what we need to do to make this work is we need a motion to reconsider our action on the Applebee's compliance check
So
violation.
moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Atten. Sorry.
That's okay.
And seconded by Councilmember Schroeder to reconsider the action we took on the Applebee's case. Is there any discussion on the motion to reconsider? If that's even allowed by our rules. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. We'll then proceed to reconsider the case of the Applebee's violation. Council, is there a motion with respect to that case?
Motion to approve a $1,000 fine for first offense on alcohol.
Second. And one day.
And still the
one-day
one-day suspension.
Retaining the one-day suspension.
Changing only the fine to the one.
Correct, reducing the fine from 2,000 to 1,000.
All right, so it's moved by Councilmember Strawn, seconded by Councilmember Groff to impose that fine on Applebee's for their first violation, $1,000 fine and the one-day suspension. Any discussion on that motion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. That penalty is adjusted. And just keeping up with my notes here. All right, that brings us then to our sixth violation this evening, which is related to La Casita, and I'll turn it over again to Deputy Chief Adams.
On August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to La Casita, conduct a compliance check. While there, the compliance checker ordered an alcoholic beverage. The employee then checked the underage ID and proceeded to provide alcohol to the checker. The server was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. While La Casita verbally informed me that all employees undergo training, they were unable to produce the necessary paperwork. That said, La Casita has since retrained employees and provided the updated training documentation to PD staff. This is La Casita's first violation within 36 months. It's staff's recommendation for council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to city code for on-sale license holders for a first violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty at the time of $1,000 and a one-day liquor license suspension.
All right, thank you, Chief Adams. Questions for staff?
So that, you changed that to $1,000 because of our discussion?
Yes, council member. Yep.
He's adapting very well.
Yes.
All right, do we have a
Keeping up with
representative,
us.
do we have a representative of La Casita with us this evening? Yes. Do you wish to speak to your case at all this evening? No, I think I'm okay, thank you. We just want to provide that opportunity. With that, then, we have the request before us. Is there a motion from the council?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. This is to impose the, at the time,
$1,000.
presumptive penalty of $1,000 fine and a one-day suspension for a first violation. Discussion on the motion? No. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and that presumptive penalty is approved. That brings us to our seventh case this evening, which is another alcohol compliance check. This is for MGM Liquor and off-sale establishment. Deputy Chief Adams.
Mayor, on August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to MGM Liquor to conduct a compliance check. While there, the compliance checker selected alcohol and proceeded to the register. The employee then checked the underage ID and proceeded to sell alcohol to our checker. The server was issued a citation, which has not since been paid. I have been in contact with that individual, however, continue to receive non-payment. As with past non-payments, I will be forwarding this to our city attorney for further review. MGM has provided the necessary training and documentation for their staff. This is their first violation within 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to city code for off-sale license holders for a first violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of $1,000 and no suspension.
All right. Questions for staff? And once again, the adjustment was made per our prior discussion to the previous penalty, which is $1,000 for a first violation. Questions from the council? Councilmember Strawn.
I'd like to discuss the possibility of retaining the $2,000 given the non-payment of the.
I think we can take that up during the consideration of the
Okay.
action, and we'll come back to that. Do we have a representative of MGM with us this evening? Oh, I'm sorry, question for staff.
Do you know if that person who got the citation is still working there?
They are not.
Okay.
I've spoken with them on the telephone, and they no longer work there.
Thank you.
And once again, do we have a representative of MGM with us this evening who wishes to speak to their case? All right. Does not appear to be the case. Council, we've got the request from the staff for the imposition of the $1,000 presumptive penalty for a first violation for an off-sale establishment with no suspension. Is there a motion from the council?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Groff to impose the $1,000 presumptive penalty and no suspension, as was outlined in the code at the time of the violation and the notice to the particular license holder. Discussion on that motion. Councilmember Schroeder is the maker of the motion.
Yes, and I think this follows our guidelines on what our policy is, and I think we should stick to it.
I'd like to make a motion to amend to put the presumptive penalty to $2,000 given non-payment.
Right, is there a second for that motion? Not hearing a second, I would rule that the motion fails for lack of a second. We have the original motion before us, therefore, to impose the $1,000 fine and no suspension, as is the presumptive penalty for a first violation for an off-sale establishment. Further discussion on the motion. I did jump in with, before I gave you a chance, Councilmember Groff as the seconder, if you wish to speak to it.
Well, I just think because of consistency with the dates and the time that this was done, I think we have to stay with that. And I think we should pursue the citation in our normal manner, which would go through the attorney, and then we would proceed that way.
All right. Any other discussion on the motion? And I would just add, just along those lines, I think it's a little bit of a challenge for us to institute a penalty on the establishment, which is what this is, in relation to non-payment of a fine by an individual that's been cited. I'm a little concerned to do that, and that's why I'm not supportive of the motion to amend to adjust upward. With that, we've got the motion before us once again to issue the presumptive penalty of $1,000 fine with no suspension for a first violation for MGM. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That penalty is authorized. That brings us then to our 8th case this evening, which is a compliance check violation for Mito. And I'll turn it over once again to Deputy Chief Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. As you'll note, this compliance check is a different date than the others. This is August 18th. Reason being is the times that we needed to go and check the compliance for Mito. On August 18th at approximately 10 p.m., an underage compliance checker went to Mito to conduct a compliance check. While there, the checker's ID was checked at the top of the stairs prior to being granted access to the basement's dance club. Once in the basement, the underage checker ordered and was served alcohol without being asked for ID. The bartender was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. Mito has provided the necessary training documentation to the PD staff. This is Mito's first violation. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to City Code for on-sale license holders for a first violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of the $1,000 and a one-day liquor license suspension.
All right, thank you, Chief. Are there questions for staff from council members? All right. Do we have a representative? Oh, Councilmember Bratton, I'm sorry.
My one question about this is if there was a checking process at the top of the stairs, would we expect that the person serving downstairs would need to also ID? Or if the person at the top of the stairs is really the person with the violation in some way?
Thank you, Councilmember Bratton, and these are conversations that we had internally at the police department. We have in our city code the serving of alcohol or the providing of the alcohol. So while this was a multi-layered, I guess, approach, the true individual who served the alcohol to the minor was the individual that was cited.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Hearing none, is there a representative from Mito this evening who wishes to speak? Once again, feel free to come up and introduce yourself.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome.
Good evening.
Good evening.
By way of introduction, my name is Ronald Walsh, counsel for Mito. We have Mr. Jonathan Soto present, Mr. Aniele Pedras.
Yes.
Are here to answer questions and I guess make their presentation to you that we are here to say we're sorry. We are here to take responsibility. We'd like to at least advise the council of some steps we've taken to make sure that this does not happen again. You also took the wind out of my sails with a very persuasive argument to go back to the $1,000 fine.
We love doing that.
So that'll keep us a little more on track here. As the officer mentioned, the fine has been paid, the citation by the server. That person has been terminated, is no longer with our organization. My client has retrained people. I think it may have, I don't know if it was a requirement, but they did it anyways. We have made a significant investment in purchasing scanners. So that should take a lot of the guesswork out of it, notwithstanding the vertical ID and the dates and so forth. But we want to offer that up and make sure the council knows that that's how serious we take this, and we don't want to ever be here again. What we would want to ask for is, it is a first-time offense, and we appreciate the sticking to the $1,000, but we would ask for either suspension of the 1 day or at least some grace on the day that's going to be selected for that, so it's not a weekend date. As we all know, that is a busy time for us. We know we can't pick the date, but we would like to at least ask for that consideration in light of the significant investment. Mr. Soto can tell you exactly how much money he has already incurred to invest in this technology. So, with that, Mr. Soto, would you like to address the council? Would you like any other?
Yes, well, I'm here to obviously take responsibility of these. I do want to say that with me, we create 127 new jobs, so it's a big team, and it's really hard to, the 6 months and then any new business is the hardest part. So with this new technology, it allows to even keep record of the people who visit me too. Mhm.
And I know they had mentioned if the person on top of the stairs checking the ID, was gonna get the fine or not, but that person has also been, terminated and we're no longer working with them.
I overlooked that. I think we've terminated the entire security staff and have brought a whole new team in
It's a private
for
company.
this.
We also have the new,
Security in the back.
He's got a nice smile.
So at the end of the day, you definitely got their attention. They were striving to comply in the first place. We apologize for being here. Well, we'll take that hit if we can at least have a little grace on the additional financial aspect of the closure. We're not asking to not be closed. We get it. But whatever sting you could take out of it, if you have to suspend it or hang something over their head for future enforcement, we're certainly amenable to that. But I don't know how many different ways we can say we're sorry, and we're going to make sure we don't come back again.
I also wanted to mention, it is a little bit off topic, but the phone calls that you guys got, with the inappropriate comments, I know we have been getting a lot of noise complaints, and we feel that those phone calls that you guys, got here could be related to the noise complaints that we have been getting. In relation to that, anytime we get a complaint, we get a fine of $250. So what happens if phone calls like that, keep making complaints? If we get so many of them accumulated, what happens at that point? If it's just people that, there's not really a reason behind it, they're just making these complaints.
And it is off topic a little bit, but I did want to respond to that. Anytime there's a complaint, especially a noise complaint, that is investigated by our police or the appropriate authorities at the city. And so we wouldn't necessarily, penalize anybody for a noise complaint if it's investigated and found to be unjustified. And so that's the situation. It certainly can be the case that even, one individual can be unhappy with the business for any number of reasons and decide to essentially harass somebody with complaints. And I think that we will certainly try to take into account those types of circumstances in terms of how we impose our penalties, because we're certainly not here in the business to unjustly penalize our businesses. But we do want to make sure, obviously, that we are enforcing our law at the same time. So there's a balance we have to find, as with many things, but I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. I did want to follow up also, if I may, on the procedure related to checking the IDs before people can go into the particular area. Is that an age-restricted area in your establishment? And is there a way that perhaps once an ID is checked that you can then, I know there's been hand stamps, there's been bracelets, there's been a number of different ways. I don't know that that's 100% foolproof, but I don't know if you've implemented anything along those lines, or if you could talk a little bit about maybe how you've changed or adapted your model with respect to that.
Okay, would you like to speak to that?
Yeah, so.
I can, but.
You can go.
I think they really want to hear from you, though. I'm just here to be responsive to their questions.
So what we do now is, if somebody comes into the facility, they get their IDs checked up on top of the stairs, and then they get scanned with our scanner that we use, and then they get wristbanded. Once they go downstairs, the bar area is restricted, only 21 and older. If anybody tries to go in that is not 21 but over 18, they are not allowed in that area.
By a security guard.
By a security guard that we have in place. And at the bar, they are as well ID'd again, even if they are wristbanded. So the wristband in place at the top is basically to help the security guards maneuver who can be in the bar area or not. And when it comes to people over 18 or under 21 that want to buy, drinks as in water or soda, there is an area outside of the bar where they can purchase drinks and not have to be in the bar area.
All right, I appreciate you helping us to understand that. That helps put it all into context, so thank you. Are there other questions for the representatives of Mito this evening? All right, thank you again for being here. We appreciate that.
And then I do want to add also, when somebody that is 21 and wants to buy an alcoholic beverage, we do limit them to only one, just to not, have them get two and be out there with two drinks. So we do limit every person purchasing a drink to only do one beverage at a time.
Thank you.
And they are also instructed, if they see somebody with a drink that doesn't have a band on them, they are to be escorted from the premises,
Correct.
in case somebody does take one out.
Sort of hand it off to somebody else.
Exactly. So we're trying to, it's a belt and suspenders approach, but it's got to be done. There's a lot of people coming in there, and those are the marching orders to the new security team.
All right, thank
So-
you. All right, and I'll check if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak to this particular requested imposition of the presumptive penalty. From the public? All right, feel free to take your seats then, and we'll move to council consideration of this item. Council, any follow-up questions for staff and/or a motion from the council? Councilmember Bratton?
I'll move the $1,000 fine and one-day suspension.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Bratton, seconded by Councilmember Groff to impose the requested mandatory minimum penalty. Councilmember Bratton, is the maker of the motion speaking to the motion?
No, thanks.
All right, Councilmember Groff? All right, other discussion on the motion? Councilmember
I
Strawn?
just wanted to make sure, Deputy Chief Adams, can you speak to when the penalty occurs? I think it's pretty standard when that suspension day is imposed.
So upon conclusion and the council's approval, we'll send a follow-up letter with a date to all of the businesses about the fine as well as the suspension date. Historically, and always, the suspension date has been a Friday or a Saturday evening.
Thank you.
And we understand the request for it not to be that, however, is when there can be the most impact as to the penalty, and that's why those dates are chosen. And I do want to say, too, that, once again, the purpose of this process is not to be onerous, but at the same time to make sure that we are clear in our communication about the impacts that we're trying to reduce in our community in terms of the sales of products to underage individuals and ultimately the consumption and use of those products, because there is a health and community safety concern that we have to take into account. With that, we've got the motion before us to impose the $1,000 presumptive penalty and the one-day suspension as requested. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That penalty is authorized. That brings us to our ninth, I believe, if I'm counting correctly, compliance check violation. This is for the Pagoda, and I'll turn it over once again to Deputy Chief Adams.
Mayor, on August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to Pagoda to conduct a compliance check. While there, the compliance checker ordered an alcoholic beverage. The employee then checked the underage ID and proceeded to provide the alcohol to our checker. The server was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. Pagoda has provided the necessary training, documentation to the PD staff. This is Pagoda's first violation in 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to the city code for on-sale license holders for a first violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of the $1,000 and a one-day liquor license suspension.
All right, thank you, Chief. Are there questions from the council for staff on this particular case? All right. Do we have a representative of Pagoda with us this evening who wishes to speak to their case? All right, does not appear to be the case. With that, then, we'll move to council consideration of the request. Once again, this is a request for a first-time violation of a mandatory penalty of $1,000 fine and a one-day suspension as outlined. Councilmember Groff?
I move to impose the mandatory minimum penalty of $1,000 fine and a one-day suspension.
Second.
Great, it's been moved by Councilmember Groff, seconded by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on the motion? Councilmember Groff, Councilmember Strawn. Other discussion? All right, hearing none, all those in favor of imposing the presumptive penalty as outlined signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That penalty is authorized, and that brings us to our final compliance check case this evening, which is for Szechuan. And I'll turn it over once again to Deputy Chief Adams.
Mayor. On August 12th, an underage compliance checker went to Szechuan to conduct a compliance check. While there, the compliance checker ordered an alcoholic beverage. The employee then checked the underage ID and proceeded to provide alcohol to our checker. The server was issued a citation and has since paid the administrative fine. Szechuan has provided the necessary training documentation to PD staff. This is Szechuan's second violation in 36 months. It is staff's recommendation for the council to issue and administer the presumptive penalty pursuant to city code for on-sale license holders for a second violation, which is a mandatory minimum penalty of $2,000 fine and a 5-day liquor license suspension.
All right, thank you, Chief. Questions from the council for staff on this case? All right, and do we have a representative from Szechuan this evening who wishes to speak to their case? All right, seeing no one, then we'll proceed to council consideration. We've got the requested presumptive penalty imposition as outlined. And once again, this is a second violation, so it is the noted $2,000 fine and 5-day suspension.
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Bratton, to impose that requested presumptive penalty. Discussion on the motion. Councilmember Bratton, Councilmember Schroeder.
No, thank you.
Other discussion? All right, hearing none, and I don't have anything wrong, right, Chief? Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. That penalty is authorized. I want to thank Deputy Chief for being here with us this evening, as well as the department staff and compliance checker for their work. Also want to thank the representatives of the various establishments for being here this evening. We really do appreciate hearing from you about how you've adapted or proceeded, once you've received this violation. I do want to also especially single out Ms. Britton from D'Amico and Sons for mentioning the issue about the fines, and we'll make sure that we don't have that confusion going forward. Now that the fines are in effect, we shouldn't, unless we go and change things again. So thank you again to everyone. And with that, that concludes our business related to the various compliance check violations this evening. Why don't we just take a few minutes to allow folks, if they are not going to stay for the rest of the meeting, to have a chance to leave without too much disruption. We'll take just a 2-minute break.
finally noticed it.
Oh, no, I noticed it earlier, but now I need a
They're
moment.
playing tonight, so I just have to.
We're back.
I'd like an legal list.
We're back from our 5-minute, 2-minute break, or 10-minute, 2-minute break. Anyway, appreciate folks getting back as quickly as they could. We have one more business item with us this evening, which is item 7K, which is to receive our classification and compensation study report. We've got our Assistant City Manager, Rebecca Olson, with us this evening, as well as our consultant, and we'll make sure to make introductions, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Olson to begin the presentation this evening. Oh, excuse me. Mr. Trudgeon, you had something you wanted to, your
not
very
much.
important introduction.
Yeah, not really that important. Just you took the words out of my mouth, and just to welcome Leah Davis from Abdo, and as well as Assistant City Manager Rebecca Olson to go over this report. We're real pleased that we're at this point now. This is something we've been working on throughout the year. As I noted in some of my materials, it's been 10 years since we had a market study and 20 years since the classification study on that. Tonight is just information, and we're happy to answer any questions, and if there's additional information you want us to bring back, we'd be happy to do that. So we're not asking for any decision tonight. We are bringing it forward for consideration on October 23rd. Primarily, at some point, we need to make a decision, so we need to implement it for the next year, so that's why we have that scheduled. But with that, I will turn it over to Leah, and she'll talk about the study and give us an update.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members. Thank you for having me here tonight. First, I want to start with, and just by saying it's been a pleasure to work with your staff on this project. We've been able to collaborate both with Mr. Trudgeon and Rebecca, and as well as the department heads. So we've had meetings, several meetings with them related to job descriptions and position scoring, and just sort of some of the overall conclusions of the report. So it's just been a pleasure to collaborate to make sure that we hopefully develop a program that is a good fit for your organization. Tonight I will go through some, you should have the full report that you should have received. I will go through just some high-level points in the slide tonight, but feel free to interrupt. I'm happy to answer any question at any time, so don't feel like you need to save your questions until the end. All right. So again, it can be helpful to just kind of briefly talk about all of the different phases included in the study. So again, we started with initial kickoff calls to identify goals, objectives of the study. I was here to meet with the council early on to talk about overall compensation philosophy and get some consensus on who is your comparable market group. And so we used that information to really build out the study and to influence some of the recommendations that are made in the report. The second very labor-intensive phase was a full update of all job descriptions within the city. So again, kudos to members of the organization from the top to the bottom for their important contributions, oversight, review of those job description drafts. But you now have available job descriptions that are updated and consistently drafted for every position within the city. Those job descriptions were then used for the position classification, also referred to as the scoring. And so that scoring was done for each position using the Abdo scoring methodology, which really measures a lot of the same things that all scoring methodologies measure. Things like overall impact on the organization, level of independent decision-making, complexity of problem solving, direct budgetary oversight, as well as required knowledge, skills, experience for positions. Special considerations are also given to positions that have unique physical, environmental, hazard exposure, those types of things. Once those positions were classified, we went out and conducted the labor market survey. This year, in lieu of the League of Minnesota Cities salary survey, which was not available for 2023 while they switched providers, we did direct surveys to all of the cities on the comparable list, and then Pat and Rebecca helped us really track down those cities that we struggled to get responses from. So I believe all but one submitted data. Once that data was made available, we compiled all of the position data, and we were really looking at average minimum pay for each position as well as average maximum pay. So not just taking a single median or average and sort of artificially building out a range for each position. We looked at 2 data points for every single position in the city. We also we'll be doing some work on some seasonal employee compensation. I know there are a few follow-up things that will just require presentation of some of the data we compiled related to seasonal positions and benefit data. So that will be provided as well, but it's more for reference only. So city staff will be receiving that. And then we spent a lot of time looking at how might the city implement any recommendations that we might make from a budgetary perspective and just an operational logistics. How do you put employees in the house is sort of how we sometimes refer to it. Any recommendations we made were run through pay equity testing to make sure that if you adopted, you would be in compliance from a pay equity perspective. And then we have some of the information about what that recommendation looks like tonight. So, all right. And again, I was the lead on this project, but Michael Mooney from our team worked very, very closely with the city team. And so we had multiple people involved in the project. Again, in your report, a lot of our work really relied on some underlying assumptions that we established early on in the project. Those were that the city is motivated to attract and retain, you wish to be competitive and to align closely with the market, that a formalized pay structure to encourage transparency, compliance, a variety of other important priorities was what the city wanted. And also that whether it was in the job descriptions and or the position scoring and compensation, there was a desire to make sure that employee potential, not just sort of on paper experience or education requirements, that we wanted to make sure to recognize potential for success in a position as not only sort of a degree requirement, for example. And then throughout the study, just important to note, and I'll kind of reiterate this a few times, but any position represented by a union was included in the study from the perspective that job descriptions were updated, that position was scored, and market data was collected for that position. But the recommendations included in your report tonight, of course, are for non-union employees only, because any other represented employee would need to be negotiated independently. But you should have good data now to go into any negotiations as they come up. All right. As far as process and methodology, again, 90, if not 100% of our data was pulled from direct surveys from cities. So they were provided a list of the positions we wanted to have data on, and the cities made their own matches based on what they knew about the positions, and then we did any cleanup based on the data provided back from the other cities. We were matching similar job titles based on our in-depth knowledge of the city of Roseville job descriptions. There were situations where, because we knew those positions so intimately, there might be positions in Roseville that maybe do a little bit of two different roles, and so blending did happen. If a certain city had two separate individuals or separate positions, we were making those accommodations in the job matches to try to capture that as much as possible. And again, we were looking for an average range, not just the average pay for each position. So overall, when you look through the report, again, I think how we landed on those comparable municipalities is important. Again, we focused on population, proximity to the Minneapolis-St. Paul metro area, what city operational departments each of those other organizations represented was important. And then we didn't actually end up using much private sector data. I know that was something we talked about, but we got really good data for the most part back from the organizations that we surveyed. So other important, again, criteria that we considered, that the council considered and agreed upon, related to budget, population demographics, retail volume, those types of things. So you can see Table 2 in your report represents the cities that did submit at least one data point, one comparable position that was used in the study. And we were using 2023 market data. So it's the most current we have. Presumably anything you would adopt would likely have a 2024 effective date, but our recommendation is just to make sure that you're considering a COLA for anything you might adopt in a future calendar year. Overall, key findings, on average across the organization. So for every position, on average, the city of Roseville was approximately 8% below market average minimum pay for each position. And I'll say this too, because that is an average, individual positions vary, right? So you may have some that are closer to market, you may have some that are even a little above market, you may have some that are more than 8% on the average minimum pay, but across the organization, it was 8%. And again, these are for non-union positions. We're talking about non-union positions here. On the maximum side, the top end side of pay, current pay ranges within the city were 10.3% below market average maximum pay. And again, that is an individual. That's on individual positions vary. It is important when we look at those averages, though, to just consider that the market data may be telling us that those positions are being paid under market. It may also be telling us in some cases that the position in Roseville is a little different from some of the comparables that we looked at. So really if you're seeing large variances in certain positions, that we're kind of taking a look at that position in a broader context of maybe that's an acceptable variance based on what you know about the position in Roseville. So just keeping that in mind, whether it's over or under the market. And then again, the variances identified in the analysis and the council's sort of direction on overall compensation philosophy, that goal of aligning with the market, that was what was used in the compensation recommendations in terms of structure that we'll be talking about. Any questions about methodology and findings before I move on to recommendations?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Councilmember Schroeder.
When you brought it up, it's the wage and benefits. What have you found about the benefits side of things?
Yes. So benefits are trickier to roll up into sort of the wage amount, right? Because it can be difficult to quantify. Even health insurance, there's a cost for health insurance, but the value of the plan varies so much. Premiums in an organization your size are really based on underwriting and claims history anyway. So we'll be providing, how many plans are offered, what is sort of that co-insurance share, how much of the premium are the other cities paying, what types of plans are they offering. We took a look at paid time off and holiday pay. Those were things that the city was interested in looking at. So that will be summarized in more of a matrix style deliverable.
Well, yes, the total cost can be different, but what we have employees pay, like the percentage or the co-pays or some of those can be very comparable. Yeah, not the total cost to the city. So when would we have that information available?
By the end of the week, we'll have that all summarized. We've had the data, it's just pulling it all together.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. All right. So, I got my slides out of order here. So the structure that we're proposing for the step and grade, which is sort of how we refer to that structure, compensation structure, utilizes a total of 7 steps, which aligns with your current non-union structure. Those seven steps allow an employee to achieve maximum pay within 5 years. So step 1 is that sort of starting step. They're eligible for step 2 upon 6 months of service, eligible for step 3 upon 12 months of service, and then eligible for a step every 12 months thereafter. So potentially achieving maximum pay within 5 years. This is competitive within the market, and I think probably, we took a look at, is that the right number of steps? Does that make sense? And I think from both a recruiting and retention perspective, that seems to really be working and is competitive with what we've seen elsewhere. So we did elect to sort of stick with that. There are 31 grade levels. We did add a few additional grade levels to try to ease up some grade compression in sort of the middle of the point range. So it gives a little more space between grades as you're adding new positions and positions are changing. Again, those 7 steps would be intended to be used as the standard compensation scale using your current step award process, which is primarily length of service and acceptable performance. If adopted based on 2023 data, adoption of the proposed scale would align the city within 0.2% of market averages for minimum pay, and again, the same for maximum pay. So it's a very close alignment to market averages for each position. There is a 5% adjustment between grades. So for example, if an employee was at step 1, grade 3, there's a 5% difference between that and step 1, grade 4. So same step, different grades, 5% difference. And within a grade, the difference from step to step is 3.5%. So any step advancement would be equivalent to a 3.5% increase in pay. And from step 1 to step 7, for all grades within the proposed range, within the proposed scale, there's a range of just under 23% from start step to top step. Questions on the, and you have, that's a lot of words, but step 3 in your report shows you sort of the mechanics.
Just a question on the percentages between the steps. So because the first step is your higher step, second is your 6-month, and the third is your 12-month, there are, in that first year, you're seeing a fairly substantial step up, if you will, to use the word step one more time. And that's, I'm assuming, fairly commonplace as we look at other comparable cities or other entities and systems.
Yeah, I would say candidly, what's happening in a lot of cities that don't have accelerated steps in that first 12 months is they're just hiring people above step 1.
Okay.
So I think your current structure allows you to potentially get them in the door at step 1 and maintain the starting step 1 because they have an opportunity to advance more quickly than in other cities. So it's probably a recruiting. And it's what you've been doing, and I think it's probably a nice advantage to continue that. Yep. So I'm just curious then, once they hit step 7, then the only thing available is a COLA thereafter. Okay. How does this compare? I guess we didn't look outside or anywhere else. I just, on the regular, outside marketplace, I just didn't know. I'm not sure I've seen too many places that have a significant change in that first year, but then often there's not a cap on where they can go at the end. Yeah, the structure of the pay scale is very different than the private sector, and some of that is a necessary evil due to pay equity compliance requirements. So making sure that, employees, whether they're in a male class or a female class, that relative to their position score are being paid equitably, sort of puts in place the requirement for this type of formal structure in order to stay in compliance and to be able to anticipate that you will stay in compliance as you move forward. So I do agree with you. It does feel very different than the private sector, but it is the status quo in the public sector to maintain, especially in an organization your size. Any sort of variance by position tends to just cause compliance issues on the pay equity side. And again, I think the difference in the public sector in terms of advancement through the scale is just that they're negotiating different starting pay in a way that's different than it's done in the public sector, right? So, in a private setting, you can negotiate whatever pay can get someone in the door. In the public sector, sticking to the structure is often important for consistency. So I do think sticking with your sort of first year advancement opportunities is probably a nice recruiting tool for you.
Other question? All right.
Okay, thank you. So again, how to implement, if you should adopt, was something that we spent a lot of time talking about with city leadership, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions about this. So there are really kind of 3 critical phases for implementation of a new step and grade table. And again, we're only discussing this related to your non-union positions. And so the costs reflected are, again, just that non-union position adoption. So there's the first step, which is the getting in the house, okay? So what that entails is saying every individual person in any position would be moved into their respective grade based on their proposed position score, and they would be placed on the step that is closest to their current rate of pay without going backwards. So some employees may today be on a step 4, and the closest rate of pay on the new scale may be a step 2 because the scale, the min and max, have moved up. No one takes a pay cut. They're simply just moving into the house on the step that is closest to their current rate of pay without going backwards. That is phase one. And so in your report on table 4, you can see that that is approximately just over 2.5%. It's 2.5% over current. That's the impact there, both in dollars and percent. The second phase involves consideration. We can kind of get into this. We tried to lay this out as well as we could in the report, but it is a little nuanced. But the second step involves then applying, so employees are in the house, applying a cost of living to the approved table, because should you adopt, we need to assume that all other cities are applying a cost of living adjustment, most likely for 2024, so you'd want to sort of keep up right away there. And then there are some more senior tenured positions that if they had sort of slid back in that scale more than, say, 2 steps, for example, so if they were at a step 7 and maybe now they're at a step 4, we're trying to recognize tenure by doing some market position realignment. So they're not coming in at the same pay as much less tenured employees. But again, we were only, the recommendation was to sort of really look at those very seasoned, long-standing employees. So the cost of living and that market position adjustment represents about 5.01% increase. And then step 3 represents what you can anticipate based on anniversary date for any employees who would be eligible for a length of service step adjustment in 2024. So we didn't want to overlook that cost as well.
And just if you could clarify on the second step, I believe in the report it talks about that the COLA portion of that is approximately something like 240,000, and then the balance of the 420 is the other piece of it, the market position portion.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you. And just on the first step, the notion of people might slot in at a slightly lower step than they're currently at in our current system, it seems like a benefit of that to individuals maybe that they have a few more steps to get up to, as opposed to being closer to the top step already in the current system. So that may be, while it might be perceived as a quote-unquote downgrade, even though they're not taking a pay cut, we're not making that part of the implementation. Going to a lower step ultimately has the benefit of sort of having a few more steps in the process.
Right.
A couple more anyway.
Yes,
So,
there's more top-end opportunity for advancement.
right.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Didn't mean to. All right. Thank you.
All right. Any additional questions?
Oh, there we go. Other questions from the council? I just was quick with my questions. All right, Councilmember.
I just had a question for Ms. Olson. I just asked one of them of City Manager Trudgeon. So the number of non-seasonal, because that is kind of its own beast, and non-police, which is its own, how many, openings, and he indicated that he could just recall like 2. So I'm just wondering if you're seeing a change in the market with, as there's more layoffs in the market, are you seeing stronger interest in some of your non-seasonal, non-police roles?
Councilmember Strawn, what we have been seeing is that all positions are difficult to recruit. So whenever one does open, people are moving from public to private, also from public to public agencies. Our turnover rate is about just under 10%, which is higher than it has been over the last 4 years or whatever. We had a high turnover rate the previous year in 2022, I believe it was. But we are seeing a lot of job postings that we make, and that they are staying open longer, and that it is fewer candidates and fewer applications. And so I don't know if that answered your question, but.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions? Councilmember Grau?
Just on the change of the level, you were saying if they moved down, their pay would stay the same. I think the public would want to know why they are being moved down, if you could explain that more clearly.
Oh, just to clarify.
It has to do with the job, but I mean, I think an explanation would be helpful.
And you're talking about the step that they're placed on? Okay. Yeah, no, that's a really great question. So again, no one's moving down in pay.
So everyone will receive some increase in pay to move into the proposed plan. Some people might receive 25 cents an hour, another position might receive $1 an hour. It really just depends on how far away their current rate of pay is from the proposed table. But what can change or appear to be going down is their placement within the established range. So you may have an employee that's placed on step 6 today, but because we were playing some catch-up to more closely align your range with the market, the range moved more than their position necessarily. So they may have been on a step 6 in your current plan, and now maybe with an increase in pay, placed on a step 4, for example. And that is person by person, and we have done all of that analysis with city leadership. So they have by individual what adoption would look like per person. So it's not a decrease in pay, but it is a change in their market position within their range.
And it's not a change in their job, really.
No.
Their job is the same, but the metric that's being used will be being changed, so that's what makes that.
The step that they are on and how many steps they have before they reach the max may change.
Thanks.
If I can follow up on that too, I think one of the considerations also just relates to implementation costs, because we conceivably could, by choice, put people on their current same step number across the system, but the cost of implementation on that, as I understood it in some communications prior to tonight, becomes more of a potential issue in terms of trying to, work that into all the other considerations we're having with our budget and things like that. So that helps maybe to explain to both employees and the public sort of that decision process. We're weighing both, making sure nobody goes down in actual pay, making sure that we align the positions and the grades properly with the positions, but then also trying not to necessarily make too much of a cost of implementation. And that's a judgment call, obviously, that staff as well as the council will ultimately have to make on behalf of the public dollars. But just wanted to acknowledge that that was a part of the consideration in that decision.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that we did do that analysis to make sure we evaluated all those options. It was just a very significant cost for a full market realignment.
Thank you. Other questions from council members?
No.
All right. Councilmember Strong?
Nope.
Oh, sorry, I thought that was
No,
a hand up.
sorry.
All right, no, that's all right. With that, well, we appreciate the information. We'll be taking a look at it and looking forward to the benefit side of it as we get that.
Yeah.
And as Mr. Trudgeon mentioned, we'll be having this for council consideration and action then on our October 22nd, or 23rd meeting. Oh, goodness. Get the month wrong and the date wrong. October 23rd.
You got it, yes.
All right.
And beyond the benefit information, which we'll provide, is there any other information that you would like to see as part of that consideration? If you don't think of anything right now, let me know. Be happy to provide.
All right. Thank you again to the consultant, Ms. Davis and
Yeah.
Mr. Mooney, and everybody else that helped at your end, and we appreciate the process we've gone through. I think it's a pretty public and outward-facing process that we've done, and sounds like something we needed to have done for some time. So we're glad we've gotten through it, and hopefully we can get through an implementation as the next steps here.
Thank you very much.
All right, with that, then, we're complete with our business items this evening. That brings us to approval of city council minutes. We have minutes from our September 18th council meeting. We have minutes from our September 18th Economic Development Authority meeting. And we have minutes from our September 25th council meeting. Before us this evening, the council has had a chance to look at those and provide feedback to staff. We've got the updated drafts presented to us as a council. Are there any needed changes or corrections in the council's review of those minutes? Otherwise, a motion to approve one or all would be in order.
I move to approve all.
Second.
All right. It's been moved by Councilmember Schroeder, seconded by Councilmember Etten to approve all three sets of minutes. Once again, September 18th council on EDA and September 25th council as presented. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those minutes are approved. That then brings us to the consideration of our two consent items this evening. Mr. Trudgeon, would you give us a brief description of those two items?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very short consent agenda. The first item is approving payments in the amount of $1,977,552.49. Item 10B approves one temporary liquor license to New Life Presbyterian Church for an event to be held on October 28th, and two THC retail licenses, one for Crave Restaurant and the other one for High Pines Brewing Company. And that is the consent agenda.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Is there a motion to approve those consent items?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Councilmember Groff, second by Councilmember Strawn. Discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Those items are approved or received. Next, we have a review of future agenda, as well as communications, reports, announcements, and any council-initiated future agenda items. Mr. Trudgeon, first of all, the review of upcoming agendas.
Yes, thank you. Our next meeting is next Monday, the 16th. We did some juggling due to things being ready or not, so we have a fairly light work session agenda, although some good topics. First is a joint meeting with the Planning Commission. They'll come and report on their work and talk about the future and maybe what they would like to work on, and also weigh in on their thought of functioning as a commission. We'd also have the Multicultural Advisory Committee that advises the police department. They want to come forward and provide an update on their work and just check in with the council. So we'll do those two items next Monday. The 23rd is a much longer list. Some of those may end up on consent, but we do have a lot of items that have stacked up here. We will see what we can do to help balance those a little bit, but we have short-term rentals, sacred settlements, reasonable accommodation. We want to discuss some modifications to Rosefest, upcoming plans for Rosebrook Park, also approve the concept plan for the new County Road B park, that is Midland Legacies Estates. We also have finalized plans and specs for Wagner Path and Tamarack Path, as well as Twin Lakes Pathway Project Phase 2, and then the classification and compensation study. So there's quite a lot there, but that's all I could fit on this slide here, so we don't look further into November, but that's enough for the rest of the month. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. Trudgeon. Questions on the future agenda, Councilmember Strawn?
We had been hinted that potentially we would be discussing the resource officers on the 23rd as well.
Yes, I haven't confirmed that, but we'll put that on once we can get that. We have to redo the contract, and thank you for bringing that up. We are headed in good direction, as I communicated to the council. I've communicated with the school district as well that we're heading in that direction. Now we just need to do the paperwork and get the contracts modified and get back to the school board. So possibly the 16th, but I think it's the 23rd is the more realistic option. So.
And typically, that's a consent agenda item.
It is, yeah.
So
Thank you.
imagining that would be the process.
Yes.
Okay. Other questions on the upcoming agenda? Right. Any communications, reports, announcements, or future agenda items from council members? Councilmember Groff.
One, NYFS will be having a ribbon cutting at their White Bear Lake Clinic, which is at 1280 North Birch Lake Boulevard, on the 19th at 3:30. And they reopened the clinic. They have had that actually closed since COVID because we had to change our schedules at that time. So it is open and refreshed. We'd like to have everyone who can come be there.
Wonderful. I apologize, I don't have the date in front of me, but I received communication that there's going to be a groundbreaking for the Ramsey County waste facility, recycling / all sorts of waste handling on Kent Street in Roseville later in October. I think it's in the 20s, 25th or somewhere in thereabouts. So certainly we'll make sure and get information out to the public, but certainly something we'll want to. 24th, something we'll want to be attending as well.
At 4 o'clock.
4 p.m. on the 24th. There we go. I just heard it. All right.
Teamwork.
I was going to say from a little bird, but given that your name is Robin, I thought that's all right.
On that note.
All right.
All right,
That
motion
is
to
all
adjourn.
we have before us. I heard a motion to adjourn from Councilmember Strawn.
Second.
Seconded by Councilmember Etten. No discussion on a motion to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at 7:57. Thank you.
All right.
I've done that early.